namely span across areas of medicine, also learning. One has been struck in the area of culture, humanitarian assistance, even food and agriculture. One of them is also, of course, medicine as well, is what we are learning. Important to also highlight how this is also being seen as Prime Minister's role of a peacemaker when it comes to the conflict in the war-torn nation of Ukraine. Remember, Prime Minister was also in Moscow in July, a visit that had received much condemnation from the West. But let's try and put this into a geopolitical perspective, and for that, let me also quickly bring in Sanjay Suri, who's been tracking all the developments for us. Sanjay, the fact of the matter is that this is also a very deeply symbolic visit for the Indian Prime Minister, considering Ukraine is going to be celebrating its National Day tomorrow. Take us through how deeply symbolic it is.
Well, the atmospherics and the optics have been very encouraging, and that's not a minor matter. Considering where this meeting was coming from, we saw the backdrop in Moscow of the meeting between the Prime Minister and Putin. We saw the response to that, the very strong reaction to that coming from Zelenskyy. Given that, the very visibly cordial and warm meeting between the two leaders is a very encouraging sign, a sign clearly that Zelenskyy has put that kind of a flare-up, if you like, behind. That said, that still doesn't solve issues, nor does the fact that we've seen agreements on some relatively minor but issues certainly to be welcomed by way of humanitarian support and other levels of cooperation. All this is to be welcomed. What really the substance of this, the heart of this, is the 3-hour meeting between the two leaders. A lot of differences are certain to have surfaced. They would have been confronted quite squarely and confronted at length, and we will have to wait and see what the outcome of those discussions has been and what those could do towards both bilateral relations and towards perhaps taking the first few steps towards an eventual path towards peace.
As far as the peace talks are concerned, I'm going to deep dive with you with regards to what are the possibilities like. Does it even seem like a possibility that will be considered between Russia and Ukraine, considering we've already seen how that cursed cooperation of Ukraine is currently going on in Russia now that it has managed to enter Russian territory. But having said that, let me also bring in Siddhant, who is very much in Kyiv as we speak. Siddhant, 4 memorandums of understanding. We all know the kind of contribution that's being made in the field of medicine by Indian students who've also sort of stood up to assist the army in Ukraine. At the same time, culture is one of them, humanitarian assistance, and not to forget food and agriculture as well. Give us a sense of what we can expect now that these 4 MOUs have been signed.
Well, look, 4 MOUs have been signed, and since Ukraine is a breadbasket of the world, so agreement has been signed in the domain of food, then agriculture also, along with that, medicine. As you know, many students come to Ukraine every year to study medicine. So the 4 agreements have been signed. This is what we can confirm for our viewers. The meeting between President Zelenskyy and Prime Minister Modi, restricted level talks, took place for about 3 hours. Initially, the time was time allocated for the restricted level talks was 30 minutes, but it went on and it took place for about 3 hours, and that perhaps is something which one can understand and can tell that why that so much time has been taken by both the leaders. So right now we can only confirm that the 4 MOUs have been signed, but there is lot beyond these 4 MOUs. There is an understanding that has been made between the two sides. This was the first time Prime Minister Modi was here in Kyiv. Prime Minister met Zelenskyy in the past at multilateral forums. They held bilateral talks, but this was special because he has come to Kyiv and he is holding talks. So restricted level talks lasted for 3 hours. Now, what is an outcome of it? What message Prime Minister perhaps is trying to has given to Zelensky? So that is something which we will be able to confirm once Mr. Jaishankar, who is going to address the press conference. Perhaps we can ask that question to him in the press conference, that why did this meeting lasted for 3 hours, and what understanding have been developed between the two sides, and as far as peace talks is concerned, what did India offer to Ukraine?
All right. Siddharth, I'm going to request you to continue staying with us. I'll quickly go back to Sanjay, who continues to stay with us as well. Sanjay, how unique is India's position if one were to consider Prime Minister Modi's role as a peacemaker? Because remember, India is somebody which is known for its stance of non-alignment, which is now also being termed as multipolarity. But having said that, let me also take our viewers through all those fresh visuals that we are bringing to them. This is the Mariinsky Palace, where Prime Minister Modi, very much accompanied by by the Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, a firm handshake over there. You can see Prime Minister also signing over there of those memorandums of understanding which have in fact been struck upon. That is the Grand Mariinsky Palace in Kyiv, as we all know. The Ukrainian president was being introduced to the Indian delegation, which, as we all know, comprises of the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Vikram Sikri. We also know that the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, is part of that delegation, as is the Secretary of State, Ajit Doval. Now, let me quickly bring in Sanjay on that note. Sanjay, we were talking about that unique position that India wields in the current geopolitical climate. We were talking about how we are also known to be somebody we've been one of those few nations who have managed to meet both the heads of state, whether from Ukraine or Russia, the other two being only Hungary and Turkey.
Well, the atmospherics we've seen really have been quite unique. The kind of meeting that the Prime Minister had with Putin, and then again with Zelensky, and the warm hug, and the hug today particularly meaningful given the difficulties that Zelensky had with the meeting that we saw between Prime Minister Modi and Putin. Now, this is a very encouraging sign. This is a sign of acceptance, receptivity, both in Moscow and in Kyiv. You cannot really think of another leader, not even leaders from Turkey and Hungary, who have enjoyed this kind of a warm welcome that we've seen. Having said that, that's not to say that it's all done and dusted and all sweet and harmonious thereon. Certainly through the 3 hours of talks, a great deal of conflict would have surfaced, differences of views would have surfaced, they would have had to be negotiated. There are serious issues about the war that have not been resolved, are not going to be resolved through the course of this intervention, not immediately anyway. The most that we can hope for, and that still is quite substantial, that a doorway is open both in Kyiv and in Moscow for an Indian intervention now and down the line.
Sanjay, at the same time, what is your assessment of these 4 memorandums of understanding that have in fact been signed up? Was this on expected lines, and is this also going to only further strengthen the bilateral relationship between Kyiv and New Delhi?
Well, certainly bilaterally, this is eased the tension that had crept up, that had shot up in Moscow, but it's still short of very, very substantive bilateral relations. Those will have to be worked out. They don't just happen at the stroke of a pen or a signature or through a meeting. Initial agreements are reached, MOUs are signed, and then of course a great deal has to follow. An MOU typically does not lead to very much, to put it a bit cynically, but at least it opens the doorway. Yes. And again, it has opened the doorway towards peace talks, but peace is a long way off. You were pointing out the incursion into Kursk from Ukraine. 3 bridges blown up. Ukraine has opened a war office now in Kursk, and Russia is going to react to that very, very strongly. And let's not forget that one of the declared red lines of Russia is that it can use the nuclear option if it is invaded and if an enemy were to cross over into Russia. Now that red line has been crossed. That creates a serious worry in Ukraine, and I know from my time in Ukraine that the fear of a nuclear war in Ukraine is very, very real. And now that this red line has been crossed, that fear would have been multiplied a great deal. So we don't know how this will play out. The conflict is really building up, it's getting more serious. What we can say is that India is positioned now to play the role of a negotiator and peacemaker. How far this will go, when this will happen, if at all, we don't quite know.
All right. Sanjay, I'm going to request you to continue staying with us because there's so much to talk about. In fact, much is currently happening in Kyiv as we speak, and all those latest visuals we will keep bringing for our viewers. But for now, Siddhant Mishra has been tracking all the latest developments for us from Kyiv. Let's also bring you one of his ground reports as he interacts with the Indian diaspora, which has been extremely excited about the Prime Minister's visit. Let's listen in.
Well, we are reporting from inside the Mariinsky Palace. This is perhaps the background which you are seeing in this video is the place where Prime Minister Modi and Zelensky met. After their meeting, Prime Minister Modi signed a message on the booklet. That's the booklet you see. And Prime Minister Modi and Zelensky have gone for the restricted talks. This is perhaps the first visit of Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine. This is historic, and perhaps all eyes would be on what message Prime Minister Modi will give from Kyiv. Viewers, right now we are reporting from inside the Mariinsky Palace, the palace which belongs to President of Ukraine, Zelensky. Perhaps this palace also has a connection with the Indian films. The popular Indian film RRR, its song Natu Natu.
With that, I welcome and invite External Affairs Minister to make his remarks to the media. Sir.
Thank you very much, Randeep. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Kyiv this morning. And we've just concluded his official engagements. This is a landmark visit. It's the first time that an Indian Prime Minister has visited Ukraine since the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1992. Now, the Prime Minister arrived by a special train in the morning, and he was received by First Deputy Foreign Minister, Mr. Andrei Sybiha, at the Kyiv railway station. He arrived here in the hotel. He met the Indian community. He then started his engagements with a visit to the multimedia exposition on children who have lost their lives in this conflict. He was accompanied to the museum by President Zelensky. The Prime Minister placed a toy in the museum in memory of the children. He thereafter went to the A.V. Fomin Botanical Gardens to pay homage to Mahatma Gandhi, whose statue is there. In fact, his last engagement is going on right now, which is that he's meeting Ukrainian students who are studying Hindi. Now, in terms of the official discussions, I should say that he held these with President Zelensky. This happens to be their fourth meeting. They had met initially in Glasgow in November of 2021, then in Hiroshima in May of 2023, and then most recently in Puglia in Italy in June of 2024. They've also had 7 teleconversations. In the discussion, obviously, a significant part of it was devoted to our bilateral relations, There was a discussion about trade, economic issues, defense, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, education. There were a whole lot of issues. You will see much of that reflected in the joint statement, which has been released already, or will be released very shortly. The leaders also, I must share with you, tasked the Intergovernmental Commission, of which Minister Kuleba and I are the co-chairs, to specifically focus on rebuilding our trade and economic relations, which had gone down in recent times. And we certainly look forward to having early meeting of that body, definitely by the end of this year. Now, while this is the first visit, I think you all appreciate that there is a very clear context in which the visit is taking place. And obviously, much of the discussion was spent with regard to the war in Ukraine. So, before I come to exactly what was discussed, I just want to give a little bit of background here, which is that there have been a number of public positions taken by India and by the Prime Minister on this subject. A little more than 2 years ago, he had actually publicly said that this is not an era of war. He had also underlined that dialogue and diplomacy are the key. Most recently, he emphasized that the solution will not come out of the battlefield. And obviously, we find the civilian and humanitarian toll of this conflict particularly distressing. It's also India's view that the two sides need to engage each other to find a solution. Now, I also want to, I'll come to the joint statement, but there's a particular segment in the joint statement which pertains to the conflict. So let me read that out, which is that the Prime Minister reiterated the need for sincere and practical engagement between all stakeholders to develop innovative solutions that will have broad acceptability and contribute towards early restoration of peace. He reiterated India's willingness to contribute in all possible ways to facilitate an early return of peace. Now, while I read that part out from the joint statement, again, just to refresh your memory, or for those of you who may not be entirely aware of it, I would like to remind you that in the past, India has actually been actively associated with various efforts led by various countries in this regard. We supported the Turkish effort in 2022 to open up the Black Sea grain corridor. In September 2022 also, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal actually took up with us the concerns regarding the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant at that time. It was a matter on which we had been thereafter directly in touch with the Russians, and then back to the Ukrainian side, also been in touch with IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi. And at various other points of time, we had also taken public positions cautioning against the danger of escalation. Now, let me now come to today's discussion on this particular subject, because I would say in terms of the time which the Prime Minister and President Zelenskyy spent, most of it actually was in regard to the conflict. So here, the Prime Minister spoke about our position, which I have summed up for you, that there is not an era of war, that dialogue and diplomacy are key to the solution, will not come out of the battlefield. He shared the widespread sentiment in the global south about the repercussions of this conflict for them. He spoke also about his discussions recently with President Putin in Moscow. The Prime Minister, if you remember, was there in July. He sought President Zelenskyy's assessment of both of the ground situation as well as the diplomatic scenario. President Zelenskyy spoke at some length on both issues. He also spoke about taking the global peace summit in regard to Ukraine forward. And I would say, if I were to kind of sum up really what was a fairly long and detailed discussion, it revolved around to some extent the military situation, about on the medium-term concerns like food and energy, and most of all on conceivable pathways to peace and conflict resolution. I would say, I'm sure the Ukrainian side will do its own briefing, but in fairness, I would sort of sum up their position as saying that they clearly wanted continued involvement of India with the Global Peace Summit. There was also a discussion about what could be effective ways of taking these discussions forward, not necessarily within the format of the summit. There are obviously multiple possibilities here and multiple views about those possibilities. So what I can say is that it was a very detailed, a very open, in many ways a very constructive discussion. And if there is any further development in that regard, we will obviously keep you all informed. With regard to other issues, I think the best that I would do, because we have a paucity of time, would be to refer you to the joint statement. I'm summing it up very succinctly. I'm not touching all points, but in the joint statement, I want to emphasize that the Prime Minister and the President reiterated their readiness to further cooperation in upholding principles of international law, including the UN Charter, such as respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty of states. As I said, they spoke about the summit on peace in Ukraine. The last meeting was in June of 2024. In terms of our own positions, I think I read out for you that particular paragraph. I would say, in addition to that, there are references in the joint statement to our bilateral cooperation, to trade, to commerce, to education. We signed 4 agreements today. One was in regard to community development projects in Ukraine. One was in regard to drug control standards and harmonization. One was on cultural exchange, and the 4th one was agriculture. Finally, let me just say that we have been, in the past, been providing humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. I think 17 consignments so far have been delivered. These are largely in the medical, on the medical side. And today we handed over the Bhishma. Let me have a look at that. Where is that? These are cubes which contain medical support equipment, which are very effective, very compact, very deployable in many ways. So these cubes with a total weight of 22 tons were handed over today, along with 10 gensets. So I think this would probably be a fair summary of today's discussions. I'm sure you will have some questions or thoughts. I'd be happy to answer them.
We open the floor now, and please do introduce yourself before you ask the question. So let's start there. Rishikesh.
Hi, sir. Rishikesh from Press Trust of India. So we have seen in the past that Ukraine side has made a very strong statement on the issue of India's import, especially on gas, energy, or coal. So when today Prime Minister meets with President Zelenskyy, did President urge India to curb its imports from Russia?
Okay. Can I take a few, because I'd like to cover as many people as possible. So Vishnu.
Sir, Vishnu Shok from NTV. Were there any specific proposals made by us, by India, to Ukraine in terms of a possible immediate path towards ending the conflict?
So question is specific proposals and immediate path.
Specific
proposals and the adjectives in question are specific proposal and immediate path.
Yes, sir.
Right, got it.
You can take one more question.
Yeah, sure, I'll take three.
Media. I have two questions. The first question is, India didn't position itself as a negotiator between Ukraine and Russia. However, Bloomberg reports that your side is willing to deliver some message from Russian side to Ukraine. Was there any specific message today from Putin to Volodymyr Zelenskyy? And the second question, what is the stance of the India on Chinese peace plan? Because India respects Ukrainian territorial integrity and it didn't include in Chinese peace plan.
Can I go with these three answers?
Sure.
Okay. So the first question, did the issue of India's energy trade with Russia come up? Yes, it did. I wouldn't say at great length, but what we did was to explain to the Ukrainian side what was the energy market scenario. The fact that many energy producers are sanctioned, making the market potentially very tight, and why actually today there is a compulsion, in fact not just a compulsion, I mean why it is in the interest of the international economy as a whole that oil prices remain reasonable and stable. On Vishnu, your question, in a way, they kind of feed into each other. Look, I would put it this way. Clearly, we've been having our own thinking and discussions with many other countries. Also, because the Prime Minister was recently in Moscow, there were detailed discussions there, which we have been quite public about. So he shared, I think, many of the thoughts and the substance of these discussions. I wouldn't necessarily characterize it in the way in which you said Bloomberg had described it. But in turn, I think we heard from President Zelenskyy at some length what his own views were, about these issues, but what his own views were about the subject as a whole. I mean, not necessarily to anything which we may have told him, we may have heard in Moscow. So it was a very, back and forth discussion. To my mind, there was certainly I'm sure that there was information which we, obtained here, and I'm sure we also perhaps may have brought up points or flagged issues which may or may not have been people would have been cognizant of here. So the way we ended was that at the end of the discussion, I think there was a sense that this is a very complex issue. I mean, yes, certainly we have this one particular format, the peace in Ukraine format. But as I said, it is the view not just of India, but certainly of India as well, that there are, there could be multiple ways of approaching this issue. Now, you asked me for one of those examples, and I'm not comparing here. I'm just responding to your particular question. Regarding, whatever China may have proposed, I think it's not for us to respond. I think it is for the parties concerned to respond. So I would suggest you direct that question at the Ukrainian government.
Can we have a question here? Rishabh, please.
Minister, good afternoon. Rishabh from Times Now. Sir, you spoke about Ukrainians asking us to be part of the Ukraine Peace Summit that last happened in Switzerland. Has there been any proposal from Ukraine to India to try and convince Russia to be on that table? Because Russia last time was not part of the Peace Summit in Switzerland. So has there been any talks from Ukrainian side that India should try and get Russia also on the table?
Siddhant.
Sir, Siddhant from Vienna. Did the Ukrainian side briefed on the Kursk incursion? Sir, this side. Did the Ukrainian side briefed on the Kursk incursion? And my second question is, PM paid his homage tributes to the victims, the children who died in the war. The Prime Minister also mentioned this to President Putin 2 months ago in Moscow. So what was the message in terms of Prime Minister paying his homage to the children?
Please.
Thank you for the question. Minister Nick Beek from BBC News. You talked about Prime Minister Modi's visit to Moscow last month, and a lot of people here were very upset to see that embrace between the two leaders. Also, they were quite upset to see India overtake China in terms of the biggest importer of Russian crude oil. And also they say they're disappointed that there hasn't been an explicit condemnation of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So in light of that, I'm just wondering whether you had difficulty today persuading President Zelenskyy that India is not favouring Russia, but is indeed pursuing a policy of non-alignment. And secondly, because of that meeting in Russia last month, I think Prime Minister Modi is probably the most significant, influential world leader to have spoken to both sides recently. What personal role could he play in some sort of pursuit of peace? Thank you.
Yours was the first question. In terms of the Peace in Ukraine Summit, it was discussed at some length because much of what President Zelenskyy said revolved around, not everything, but a significant part of it. Now, where they go, at the end of the day, it's their initiative. Okay, it is their initiative in which we have taken part. I mean, if you look at it from at every stage of that initiative, when it started in Copenhagen, his predecessor was there. Then the NSA went into Jeddah. The deputy NSA went to Riyadh and to Davos. Similarly, the hybrid formats in Doha, even at Bergenstock, we have been represented at that level. So we have been represented there, but we also agree on some parts of it and don't agree necessarily on all of it. So I think there was a very open discussion on this. Now, What will be the next steps? Who exactly will come? Will the Russians come in, not come in? That's really not an issue for us to take a call. I mean, that's an issue which presumably the government of Ukraine is dealing with. Siddhant, regarding your issue on Kursk, yes, I would say the military situation, including some recent developments, did come up for discussions. And in terms of the visit, what you asked about the homage, particularly to the children. Look, in any conflict, obviously, any death is something which is, to put it mildly, regrettable. And if it is a civilian death, a humanitarian death, even more so. And if it is a child's death, even more so. So I think it is something which touches everybody. And even, when we were in Moscow, it is a subject on which the Prime Minister spoke publicly. So I think it was very natural for him to come and express that feeling in some kind of gesture. Regarding your question, in our part of the world, when people meet people, they are given to embracing each other. It may not be part of your culture, but I assure you it's part of ours. So, in fact, today I think I saw the Prime Minister also embrace President Zelenskyy, and I've seen him do it with a number of other leaders in a number of other places. So I think perhaps we have a slightly cultural a gap here in terms of what these courtesies mean. In terms of what you asked about the oil issue, look, India is a big oil consumer. It's a big oil importer because we don't have oil. Now, it's not like there's a political strategy to buy oil. There is an oil strategy to buy oil. There's a market strategy to buy oil. So the figures of where we get our oil imports go up and down. It depends on the state of the market. But it would definitely, I think the fact that the market is tight, that today big suppliers like Iran and Venezuela, who used to supply India, are constrained from operating freely in the markets, I think is a factor which needs to be taken into account. Regarding the conversation between the Prime Minister and President Zelenskyy, I think it was a perfectly convivial conversation. I think it was very constructive. I think there was a lot that we said which he heard with a great deal of attention. He knows that we mean well by Ukraine. He knows that we are today very, very keen that this conflict should come to an end. And essentially what the message from our side to him, which surely would have not come as a surprise to him, is that, if there is anything that we can do in any way, in sort of upfront or behind or supporting somebody, it's the objective that we are interested in rather than the process. We are willing to do whatever we can because we do think that the continuation of this conflict is terrible for, obviously, for Ukraine itself and for the world as well. Yes, sure. Quickly. Uma Shankar.
विदेश मंत्री जी, आपने बताया कि 32 साल बाद राजनीति
as a leader by the Indian Prime Minister, especially for the people of Ukraine. They've been really looking forward to it, and clearly it's also a pivotal moment in India's global diplomacy, which underscores India's commitment to playing a more active role in seeking peaceful resolutions to the ongoing conflict. There you see it. This was very, very important moment of this entire trip. The Prime Minister, the Indian Prime Minister, having a hand around President Zelenskyy, offering words of assurance. And you can just make out from the body language of the Indian Prime Minister, him being very empathetic to the ordeal and, the pain of those who have lost their lives in the ongoing war. The Prime Minister giving a big hug there to Ukrainian President Zelenskyy. So it's a very, very important moment there, an opportunity for India actually to try and balance things out after his very important visit to Moscow and India's close relationship with Russia as well. This trip is also in a sense going to restore India's reputation as a very peaceful, a responsible and principled global player as well. So very important visuals that we're getting in right now. After this interaction, and now the two leaders will go inside. They're going to be speaking for a short time. They're going to be talking on some very crucial inputs as well. Akanksha joins us now for more updates and details. Akanksha, I think the highlight of this is that big hug. That is something, if you just talk about the symbolism of it, Zelenskyy was extremely upset with the hug that was exchanged between Putin and him. But the Prime Minister having a hand around him, giving that assurance that India stands with the Ukrainian cause as well.
Absolutely. And, I think that hug is also India's way of communicating to the Ukrainian president the fact that, India doesn't, just believe in non-alignment. In fact, it stands for multipolarity. The fact that Ukraine has been very vocal about how India has not been open in its condemnation of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm sure India will be able to communicate its stance when it comes to multipolarity, but it would be very interesting to see how Prime Minister Modi manages this tricky balance between Moscow and Kyiv, because remember, we'll have to see how President Putin actually assesses this. I'm sure he will understand, because remember, it was at one of the SEO summits a couple of years ago when Prime Minister, not just in that meeting with the Russian president last month, but it was a couple of years ago when Prime Minister Modi was the first person to tell him that this is not an era of war, something that also went down in the joint declaration when we in New Delhi hosted G20. So I'm very sure that the Indian Prime Minister will be able to manage that diplomatic tightrope walking, something we have done. But what comes out of this visit, we've also seen that deeply symbolic visit that he's made to this memorial today. Remember, it was when Prime Minister was meeting the Russian president that attack on the children's hospital took place in Ukraine. So Prime Minister Modi also feels deeply responsible for what's happening, not to forget how it's been a domino effect for all of Global South, which has borne the impact of how the global chains have been disrupted. So India only stands to benefit as the leading voice of Global South. Over to you, Avantika.
Oh, absolutely. Akanksha, this is a very, very important visit. I'm going to keep going back to the visuals there of the Prime Minister giving a very big, tight hug to President Zelenskyy. Sanjay Suri, in fact, is with us as well. Sanjay, we're just seeing the visuals there of the Prime Minister not just hugging President Zelenskyy, but, also putting an arm around him. And this gesture is extremely important as far as diplomacy is concerned, as far as the relationship between both the nations are concerned as well. Do you agree that, this underscores India's commitment to playing a very important, responsible role in somehow finding a resolution to this very complex issue?
Well, certainly it's a very, very important moment, because it's a moment that we've been waiting for, to see exactly what happens, whether we see signs of warmth or signs of weakness. That Zelenskyy has put behind him, the outburst and the angst of his expression when the PM met Putin in Moscow. That was a very, very strong statement. It's not often issue such strong statements. He did, and this is now a very firm and very clear signal, a very calming signal that he's put that behind him, and he's prepared to PM on news. Also, it's a sign of welcome that he is now looking to build on closer bilateral relations, and also a sign that he is welcoming of any initiative that India could do far in the distance, no immediate prospects or signs of that, but certainly that path is open, and Zelensky is welcoming of it.
Very interesting. Sanjay, stay on with me. Political analyst is and we are showing our viewers that hug, the hug of consolation, comfort, a very reassuring hug and embrace to President Zelensky. I was speaking to a Ukrainian MP a short while ago, and I mean, in fact, that the entire Ukraine is looking.
Welcome back. Now, the Union Home Minister Amit Shah has reacted to the latest ahead of the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly elections. Let's also inform you what the Union Home Minister has said. He has in fact attacked the Congress party for being a party against the unity and the national security of India. He says that the Congress party, which has repeatedly risked the nation's unity and security to satiate its greed for power, has once again exposed its ulterior motives by in the Jammu and Kashmir elections, and that is the big attack coming straight from the Union Home Minister himself. Remember, earlier we had also heard the Jammu and Kashmir BJP president talk about how the BJP is in fact fighting this election in the valley as a lone wolf. Let's quickly bring in Payal Mehta, who is tracking all those details for us. Well, important to in fact highlight message that is coming out from the Home Minister, who's gone on to again reiterate the fact that Congress remains this party which is anti-national.
The chief architect of the abrogation of Article 370, which seems to have set a new tone for Jammu and Kashmir, the Union Home Minister Amit Shah over there, Akansha, asking 10 pointed questions to the Congress party, especially Rahul Gandhi, who was seen in the pictures. That National Conference is the party which has been asking for a separate flag for the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Is that acceptable to the Congress party? Is it acceptable to the Congress party that they're looking at overturning the abrogation Article 370, which clearly means that the people of Jammu and Kashmir will not be able to take benefit of the central government schemes? Is it acceptable to the Congress party? Because, the National Conference has been speaking about, forming up ties again with Pakistan, speaking with Pakistan, when the stated position of the present government has been that terror and talks will not go along together. So 10 questions that Amit Shah is in fact asking the Congress party and Rahul Gandhi to explain. Even though you've seen over the last decade or so, since the government in the centre powered by Narendra Modi has been in ruling, they've constantly been saying that terror and talks will not happen together. We will not speak and we will not ally with anybody who speaks the anti-India line. And they've been speaking about the misdoings of the Gandhi Nehru family, which has plagued the country, especially the state of Jammu Kashmir, for decades together. And a lot of work has been done by the Modi government here in the centre, by abrogating Article 370, ushering in development, bringing in reservations for the Bakarwals, the Dalits, amongst the others. How can all this be undone? And if it's being done, then Rahul Gandhi and Congress party needs to come out and clarify as to what their stand really is. So obviously, with the election season looming large, Akansha, the BJP is coming out hitting strongly at the Congress party in the wake of the alliance that they've struck with the National Conference.
All right, Payal, going to request you to continue staying with us. I'm also joined in by Ms. Ifra Jan, who's from the National Conference. Of course, your first thoughts, Ifra, on what the Union Home Minister has had to say.
You see, the first thing, it's not that the BJP government in itself firstly was in alliance with the PDP government in 2014. And if you look at the PDP's manifesto, it said that they wanted self-rule. Self-rule was far, far ahead than Article 370. Article 370 is something where we want a strong status of a state within India. Self-rule was not even within India, it was beyond that. So let's not forget that BJP was in an alliance with the PDP in 2014, which put self-rule in its manifesto. So I do not know why they're sitting on a moral horse today. Now, coming to the proxy political parties, they started in Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, their leader head of the state in Jammu and Kashmir very clearly said that this political party is our proxy party in Jammu and Kashmir. And please look into their agendas. They have said that they stand with Article 370. Now, coming to the fact that the number of, if I were to start naming the number of BJP workers involved in terror activities in Jammu and Kashmir, I would probably run out, you would probably run out of the field, run out of the show, because those words will take so much time.
BJP stance, something that we've also heard being reiterated by the BJP Jammu and Kashmir state president as well. He's gone on to talk about the duplicity of this nature of the entire alliance, because remember, we've seen that widening rift during the Lok Sabha elections when it came to the Lok Sabha seat in Ladakh, and now they're saying, Rahul Gandhi also talked about how he will ensure that respect is meted out to every Congress person fighting for that election in Jammu and Kashmir, and so that it's only a matter of time that rifts surface once again in this coalition.
Ironic that this statement is coming from the NDA person who BJP themselves are in an alliance with regional parties at this point in the center, who in the past have made very, very anti-BJP statements. And in fact, if you look at Chandrababu Naidu's statement and Nitish Kumar's statement, ideologically they are apart. In Jammu and Kashmir, National Conference and Congress are not ideologically apart. We both believe in secularism. We both believe in nationalism. We both believe in integrity of the country. We both believe in ensuring that people of Jammu and Kashmir...
But if do focus on the bone of contention. The bone of contention is the fight for the revocation of the abrogation of Article 370, and that, according to the BJP and the government at the centre, makes parties like the Congress, or their stance rather, like the Congress Party and the National Conference, anti-national.
You see, in fact, Article 370 was gotten into Jammu and Kashmir and was put in the Constitution of India by no one other than Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. He was the Home Minister of the country when Article 370 was designed, when it was put into place. If BJP believes that Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel is
stay with me, because I'm also joined in by Mr. Nirmal Singh of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Mr. Singh, as Ifra was also highlighting, why attack the Congress and National Conference alliance when the BJP itself has been in an alliance in the past with the PDP?
Actually, this is opportunistic alliance. They did it during Lok Sabha elections, and we have seen that all the three families, whether it's Nehru Indira Gandhi family, Abdullah family, or Mufti family, all the families, they have been taught lesson by the people of Jammu and Kashmir, by the voters of Jammu and Kashmir, because two former chief ministers, Umar Abdullah and Mufti Mahbooba Mufti has been defeated, and Congress didn't get even a single seat. So let the people of Jammu and Kashmir have seen their, you can say, what they did during the last three generations. Whatever message there, it's because of them, right from the 1947 and inclusion of Article 370.
But Mr. Singh, my quick question is about what the Home Ministers had to say. The unity of the nation.
Well, see, what's the policy? What manifesto they are having? They are saying that we'll bring back Article 370, which was the root cause of separatism and terrorism, because it gave handle to Pakistan to meddle in our internal affairs. And Pakistan has occupied 1/3 of Jammu and Kashmir, and we have seen that this Congress, the Nehru took this issue to this UN.
All right, I'm afraid I'm running short of time. My apologies to you, Mr. Singh, but thank you for making that point, and thank you, Ifra Jan, for joining in on Nation at 5. And with that, it's a quick wrap from my end. Thank you so much for watching. Up next is Plain Speak with Shivani Gupta. Stay tuned.
Brought to you for some sort of resolution to this complex issue, to the war that continues in its third straight year. What are your thoughts? What are your thinking about this movement?